In this lesson, we're going to explore levels. Now, levels is an incredibly powerful set of adjustment tools that you can utilize to actually take your image to really that next level. So I'm going to use the stock photos _4. It's essentially this restroom sign, and I'm going to use this as a great example of how powerful levels really are. Now, this image looks okay, but watch what happens when I go to Image, Adjustments, and I go over to Levels. Okay. Now, in this Levels environment, what I've got are some options. Now, I could choose this dark area and say, okay, make everything darker. I could choose this white area and say, make every one of these pixels from here and before brighter. Or I can adjust the midpoint. Now, what's really cool is when you allow the computer to actually do the calculations for you. So if I select this dark image sampler or eyedropper and come up here to this dark area and click, what I've essentially said is that is black. And if I do the same with white and say, okay, this is white, you notice how I've toned out this image? Now, here's where you can have a lot of fun. You can say, all right, what's gray? The middle one is 50% gray. If I click on this sign, notice how I bring all of this color from this wood right back? Because I've pretty much said, all right, that is essentially 50% gray. So go ahead and readjust the colors in this scene to match that. So here's before and after. And it's just an incredibly warming effect. Now, we could do the same with photographs. I'm going to open up the levels.jpg lesson here, or image file here. And I'm not for sure how easy it is to see on your screen at home, but, it's pretty dark here, but not real dark right here. So, it doesn't look like she's isolated on the background. It looks like there's some kind of a gradient or the flash bulb was being able to be seen here. So what we're going to do is go ahead and open up Levels, and you can do that by pressing Image, Adjustments, Levels, or earlier I just did Control L. Okay, so there's Levels. And again, we can play with these manually, or we can go ahead and choose the dark and say, okay, this is black. Notice how it made that whole black area nice and dark. Okay. Now, I don't have a white to sample. Normally, you have a little flash bulb light right here. So what we can do is go ahead and come in and just tighten this up just a bit to help bring out some of that detail and flatten out her, or even out her skin a little bit. Now, you have a couple of options. You could choose auto and say, all right, automatically do the levels, and then we can make this black, and that'll do this mid-ground and white areas. You have that option. You can also limit what areas this levels works in by controlling the output level. So you have a number of options here. Now, what if you want to adjust the tonal colors of this? Well, you can go into individual channels. So let's say something like the blue channel, and you can actually come in and crank up or down the blue. You can bring in more or less blue, essentially utilizing the levels. Now, one thing that I do want to show you is what happens if you say OK. So for example, let me bring up another image. This is going to be it's called prize-winning stock art. It's a shot that we had here in our library. And it's essentially our lighthouse, but from a different angle. All right, I'm going to press Control L to bring up my levels. And I'm going to make some adjustments, okay? And I'm just going to be very rough with my adjustments and say, okay, that looks good. Let me take my green, crank in my greens, get some more in here. Just something real gaudy. And I go, oh my gosh, that looks terrible. Let me get some of that green out. I go, okay, Control L, bring up my levels. I go to my green, and heaven behold, this is reset. This is not where this arrow was, and this is not where this arrow was. So what happens is I start really messing up this image. So if you're going to be using levels or any of the other adjustment tools, which we'll play with here in just a second, you're going to want to use these using adjustment layers. So let's revert this image, okay, F12, and let's open up our layers palette. And inside of this, we're going to create what's called an adjustment layer. Now watch what happens. It's right here. It's the fourth icon down at the bottom. And I'm going to choose that and then choose levels. Now, it brings up this adjustment layers menu palette here, and I can come in and say, okay, let's make some tweaks, something like this. Okay, and what I want you to be aware of is the placement of these actual icons or control points here. Okay, so there it is. We're done. We're working. We click around other stuff. We draw some, we do some marquees. We do some different things, and we go, you know what? It's really a little bit too dark. All you have to do is double click on this levels here, on this little icon, double click, and it will bring up the same levels palette that we were working with. And look, it remembers exactly where all of these control points are. So if I want to go in and actually make that adjustment, I can. And I haven't lost any of my image data or my settings. I can also turn this on and off. So as a rule of thumb for me, if you're going to do any type of levels or any type of image adjustment, I would recommend doing them inside of adjustment layers. That way you have the freedom to go back, forth, or even mask it. So you can combine some of the things that we taught you earlier and combine those types of skills to create really the images that you're after.